So some of these users told me that instead of fixing technical issues, they got looks like a cosmetic filter applied to their face that lengthened their eyelashes. Another user said that the tool lightened his skin tone and even added blemishes that he says made him uglier.
Nobody wants that. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Here's the Scoop from NBC News. I'm Yasmin Vasugian. So today on the show, we are talking about Tinder. You're wondering why. So I spoke to NBC reporter Angela Yang, who told us about a Tinder user whose profile picture was changed without their consent because of this AI tool that they have now put on pause. So the question is this pushing people away from the dating app and back to the bars, old school? Plus, the job market. It is not looking good for recent college graduates. So what are they doing about it? How bad is it? And what does one need to do to get a job these days? Up first, though. So Russia carried out a massive attack in Ukraine overnight. According to officials, at least 8 civilians were killed and over 50 were injured by the barrage of ballistic missiles and drones. And it reached deep into western Ukraine. One Russian missile crossed into Polish airspace. NATO then had to scramble warplanes in response. But as this war in Europe is raging on, there's a new battleground that could put the Russia-Ukraine war on a collision course with the Iran war. And that is in the Caspian Sea. So over the weekend, Ukraine launched attacks on Russian ships and, according to Tehran, an Iranian vessel in the Caspian Sea. So why is Ukraine pushing the war there? And could these two conflicts converge? For this, I want to bring in Nicole Grajewski. She's an expert on Russian-Iranian relations at Sciences Po and a research fellow at the Belfer Center. She is also the author of a new book, Russia and Iran, Partners in Defiance, From Syria to Ukraine. Hi, Nicole.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
It is great to have you. So we don't talk about the Caspian Sea a lot. And for folks that don't know, talk about the significance of the geography of the Caspian Sea and why it is such in a crucial position between Ukraine, Russia, and Iran.
Yeah, the Caspian Sea is actually Russia and Iran's only border. It's their only maritime border that they have. Several states occupy this Caspian Sea, so that's Turkmenistan, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Russia, and Iran. It is a sea that forbids any kind of foreign kind of military involvement. This is stipulated in the Caspian Agreement. And since the war in Ukraine, it's really become a conduit for Russian and Iranian trade and also some of their illicit transfers of arms. So it's been a zone for them to kind of operate unfettered by international intervention. And it's really their kind of main kind of node between each other.
So after these strikes, Ukrainian President Zelensky, he accused Russia of sharing intelligence with Iran. What is the basis for this accusation? Because listen, Russia and Iran have a long history of unifying around certain kind of geopolitical issues and intelligence sharing, working together.
Yeah, I mean, the basis for this, we saw actually in the very first stages of the war where there was accusations that Russia was potentially supporting Iran's targeting of American troops. And since then, there's been reporting from the German publication Stern that actually showed that the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service had a station in Tehran that has been transmitting a lot of data from satellites to the Iranians. Additionally, there are some kind of evidence, I would say, that the Russians have helped Iran in terms of their UAV or drone performance. And that's partly through lessons that the Russians have learned from Ukraine. So there's quite a bit of basis, I would say, to the Ukrainian claims.
Zelensky keeps asking NATO and the United States for help in fighting Russia. And, we saw the NATO jets scrambling last night as the Russian strikes were deep into Ukraine near the Polish border. What is Ukraine's objective from your standpoint in these recent attacks in the Caspian?
It seems like Ukraine wants to at least draw attention to how closely intertwined these two wars are. I mean, Iran's involvement in the war in Ukraine through the delivery of shaheds to Russia has been a frequent occurrence in this war. You see Ukrainian civilians almost every night waking up to the sound of the shahed drones over their territory. And I think what Zelensky and the Ukrainians had sought to do is to show and demonstrate that this relationship is crucial not only to the war in Ukraine, but also to the ongoing war in Iran. So it was to draw out the connections, I think, between the two wars.
Is it also trying to exemplify to the United States that they have a common enemy, and that is Iran and Russia?
Yes, certainly, I would say so, and also towards Israel. Ukraine has sought more cooperation from Israel when it comes to defense, and so that's also, I think, another motive here.
So Russian President Putin appears to be losing support nationally, especially when it comes to the war in Ukraine. I'm wondering if you think we could see more unity between Russia and Iran going forward as the conversation surrounding both countries is shifting and Ukraine is making this case.
I mean, I think that the Russia-Iran relationship has really strengthened from the war in Ukraine, and also because both countries share similar domestic issues. Iran had this massive and really horrific crackdown on protesters earlier in January, and you actually saw Russian armored vehicles being used and Russian light arms being used to crack down these protests. So there's also that synergy on the domestic front. But I think it's likely that this relationship will continue intensifying, partly because of this kind of common enemy of the United States and also their broader goals internationally, too.
How does Russia reconcile that, though, especially considering the fact that they've tried to play both sides, right? They're trying to continue to have this relationship, this partnership, shall we say, with Iran, intelligence sharing, munitions sharing, buying, selling, but then also a relationship with the U.S. president, right? President Trump. Putin has had a longstanding relationship with Trump, and Trump has praised Putin historically.
I mean, within Russia, there's many sides of this government. There's a kind of public-facing diplomatic front and also the military technical front. And on the military technical front, the cooperation between Iran and Russia has been quite robust, and it's done with quite a degree of deniability, at least on the Russian side. Even President Trump himself has refuted allegations of Russian support to Iran. I think most notably, even like a week ago, he suggested that this wasn't the case. So at least for the Russians in their public signaling, they're far less, I think, inclined to say that they're outwardly supporting Iran. But at the end of the day, a lot of their support for Iran does benefit them, even in Ukraine. As the interceptor question is really one of the great examples of that, and also but higher prices on the energy markets, which has been really beneficial for Russia.
With Ukraine getting more involved in the war with Iran, could they be drawing accidentally Europe further into that war, something that Europe has not wanted to be a part of, in spite of demands from President Trump?
I mean, it's possible with the kind of allegations, or at least what the Iranians were trying to do, I think a few days ago, were to suggest that they would potentially launch strikes on Ukraine. Part of that actually ties into Europe because the ballistic missile threat has been something of a pretty large concern for the Europeans when it comes to Iran. And so it seemed like that would also be a signal towards Europe. And that could mean that Europe become more involved in this. But I would say that right now it seems like Ukraine and Iran are kind of going towards de-escalation.
I just have to say this, and I know you're an academic, you're an expert in this region, but if you think about the geography of this whole thing, we have two active wars happening very close to one another, that if they were to collide, the possibility of what that could become is really worrisome, Nicole.
No, I mean, I would agree. And I think that Iran and Russia both have an interest in not seeing these two wars metastasize into something bigger and kind of a combined theater. I would say that, even though there has been the Ukrainian strikes on Iranian and Russian vessels and also Iran's involvement in the war in Ukraine, there's still two different types of wars. And they're also kind of different in terms of scope and involvement regionally. But it does look quite worrisome when you look at the map and you see the Caspian in the center of this. And actually the real linkage between the two wars is really occupying in that area.
Nicole Grajewski, thank you.
Thank you so much.
So getting a job out of college has never been easy, but it's even worse now for college graduates. Hiring rates for entry-level jobs have gone down 5 years in a row. And a lot of young people graduating from college are just not feeling good about what their careers could look like in the future. So I want to bring in NBC News data graphics intern Ashley Mowreader, who's been looking into the numbers and speaking with some recent college grads as well. Hi, Ashley.
Hi.
Well, you have a job, so that's good.
Thank God. I'm very lucky to be here.
For now.
Yes. Yes.
So walk me through the latest numbers. What are we seeing right now, especially when it comes to entry-level hiring?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a tough job market for everybody, but especially for entry-level hires, we're seeing that there's fewer job postings to start off with. So that's on LinkedIn, and then Handshake, which is specifically designed for college students. We're seeing that compared to pre-pandemic, there's fewer jobs out there being posted. And then when students are getting jobs, they're seeing fewer job offers per application that they're putting in. So for whatever reason, these jobs are really hard to find and they're really hard to land for our college graduates.
So how did we get here? Like, how much did COVID play into where we're at now?
So COVID was definitely a factor, but also post-COVID, economically, the Fed cut interest rates. So a lot of companies were investing in talent. We just had more jobs 2022, 2023.
When interest rates were low, more
Exactly.
companies were investing in jobs.
Exactly. But more recently, starting in about 2024, there was just greater economic uncertainty, whether that was higher interest rates. We had some geopolitical conflicts starting up around that time. And now with higher energy rates, it's just less affordable and makes less sense for companies to hire on a whole bunch of new talent. So we're in what's called a low hire, low fire job market. So that means that people who have jobs are hanging on to them. They're not leaving. And employers aren't cutting jobs or adding on new ones. Some people call it job hugging when maybe you don't want the same job that you have, but you're scared to go look for something else. So
that's sad.
It is sad, and especially for new talent, right?
Yeah.
They're coming out of school. They have all this excitement and energy and maybe new tools that they're using, and they can't get in anywhere because nobody's leaving their job and nobody's making new jobs for them.
With that, then, how are people kind of going after jobs in this day and age? And I say this because, like we were talking about this in our editorial meeting this morning, and back in my day, which wasn't that long ago.
Right, 5 years ago.
It was like, like the monster.coms and stuff were just surfacing.
Sure.
And people were using them. But even in that point, it felt as if you were like shouting into a void.
Yes.
And the way in which a lot of folks got jobs was like my sister's brother's mother's father's daughter's kid is an intern or is this or that, and you reach out to them. What is the process like now?
I think there's a few different avenues. Job boards are definitely number one. So LinkedIn, Indeed, Handshake, some of these larger platforms are where most employers are posting their jobs, and students and others are finding them. Career centers and career services are still a big thing. So having alumni come back and speak or having internships. Internships are actually a very critical gateway for college students right now. If you don't have experience on your resume, you're not going to stand out. There's actually a few different studies about, if you have any sort of paid internship experience, you're more likely to get more job offers get a job before you graduate.
But you got to get the internship
But you have to get the internship, which is the same cycle of there's fewer internships right now for students because companies don't have extra hands and help that they can invest in young talent. That said, those companies that do have interns are more likely to hire them on for full-time jobs and see higher retention levels. So there's a way to break this cycle. We just haven't quite gotten there yet.
What are people telling you right now? Like, how are they feeling about this market?
I would say bummed is a pretty easy word to put in there. I think you mentioned the black box earlier of, I'm sending off these applications, but I don't know where they're landing. That's true. And a lot of people have AI anxiety of AI is taking my jobs. People are replacing me with AI.
Even people in your position who feel as if like they've grown up with the tech world.
Yes.
They have AI anxiety as well.
Absolutely, yes.
Because they feel as if the entry-level jobs are being taken by AI?
Yes. I think we're seeing a lot of executives talk about AI as like, well, we'll just have fewer people because AI can automate and process those jobs. The other thing in the recruitment cycle is there's a lot more AI interviewers. You might be sent a webinar link and you're talking to a robot rather than a recruiter, or you get a phone call from an AI voice model instead of a recruiter. So there's more jobs even in the hiring process that are AI. And so people, they hear about these stories and they get scared and sad, and it feels like nobody actually cares whether or not they land that job.
So how are they trying to distinguish themselves in those, especially in a world of AI, in a world of millions of people going for, fewer jobs right now. How are they distinguishing themselves?
I think the idea of a personal brand is very big right now, whether that's you on social media, whether that's having a lot of, again, work experience, sort of distinguishing yourself as I am valuable because I am me rather than I am one of 1,000 applicants. We're seeing more students do crazy stunts on LinkedIn or TikTok trying to say,
what?
I've seen people who will post spreadsheets of how many internships they've applied for, and they'll do things like, I'm going to eat a piece of sushi for every rejection that I get. And they'll post these videos of themselves talking about how they can't find an internship or it's so hard to break into this industry.
And will they tag the companies that they're applying to so the companies will respond to them?
Or I'll see students make decks for, they want to work at Duolingo and be their intern this summer or whatever. And they'll make a presentation and send it off to Duolingo and be like, this is what I could do if you hire me.
Wow.
So finding those opportunities to say, I already know what you need and it's me.
So again, you're an intern here at NBC. You've been researching and writing this story. It's the reason why you're on this podcast today talking about it. How has researching and writing this story and reporting on it, how has it made you feel about your career prospects and your future and your kind of stability going forward?
Yeah.
Especially in journalism.
Right. I mean, there's definitely a lot of negative news out there, but I will say, while we're seeing declines, that doesn't mean there's no jobs. I think I have a pretty level-headed perspective about all of this. Like, people do want new talent. They do like new ideas, but it might just be a little harder and it might not be as easy as printing out your resume and walking up to the CEO.
Ashley Mowreader, best of luck.
Thank you so much.
Great story. Thank you.
Thank you.
So you guys all know the dating app Tinder, right? It is now, though, pausing this controversial AI tool that was making some changes to the pictures on the profiles of users without their consent.
They literally took someone else's teeth and put them on my teeth. That is not my face, and I am so absolutely confused.
So NBC News trending reporter Angela Yang has been talking to users about these unsolicited makeovers or teeth transplants on some of these pictures, and she's joining us now. Hi, Angela.
Hi, Yasmin. It's nice to be here.
So what's going on here? What is this tool?
Yeah, so Tinder has been testing out this AI-powered tool that automatically enhances photos that, if Tinder detects that there are technical issues with a photo, it will just apply an enhancement. But it's not clear what that means because Tinder says that these are not meant to alter people's appearances. But then there are a small minority of users who say, well, the only thing it changed was my appearance. And so Tinder is saying, oh, that was not an intended effect. So that's why they have now paused the tool while they're investigating.
Okay, so technical issues, right? Because maybe your lighting is off, right? Maybe your picture is a little dark or it's blown out a little bit because of the lighting. So feasibly, this tool could fix that. Okay, that's great. But a technical issue would not be putting teeth in a smile when it's a closed mouth smile.
Exactly. So some of these users told me that instead of fixing technical issues, they got what looks like a cosmetic filter applied to their face that lengthened their eyelashes. Another user said that the tool lightened his skin tone and even added blemishes that he says made him uglier. And
added blemishes?
That's what it seems like because he had some freckles on his face. And so he was saying, well, this tool added what looked like acne marks instead of freckles.
How is this making them feel, these users whose photos were altered?
Yeah, I mean, they're really surprised because some of these users didn't even know until they opened the app and got the in-app notification. There was one user who actually, her name is Yana, she deleted her Tinder by the time she found out that it had edited one of her photos. One of her friends actually screenshotted her profile and sent it to her, and that's how she found out that Tinder had added a whole tattoo to her shoulder that doesn't actually exist.
A tattoo? Yeah. That's definitely not
Yeah.
enhancing the image. That is altering the image.
Exactly.
Why have they now paused this tool? And when did they do it? How quickly did they pause the tool? Like how long was this tool being used until they paused it?
The tool rolled out this spring, but it was in a limited test. So it was available in 13 states by the time Tinder paused it. And that was pretty recent. I reached out on Monday and Tinder said they just became aware of the issue. And they say that this unintended effect was applied to a small number of users who got the enhancements. They say it's about 0.5% of users who got the enhancements who saw their appearances altered.
Here's the thing, though. People have been enhancing their photos for a very long time. There's a reason why people will show up for dates and go, well, that is not what that person looked like in the photo, right? Because and we're all guilty of it at some point or another, where you might take a blemish away from your photo, right? You may make your skin look a little smoother, whatever it is that you're doing to your picture. So, like, in a way, this is not new. This idea of kind of enhancing and changing up photos. It feels like the difference here, though, is it's not the user doing it; it's the company. It's the app.
Exactly. And that's why users are telling me, like, well, this is weird because now it could enhance this catfishing problem that already exists on these apps.
Right.
One user was telling me how he already runs into a lot of AI generated photos in general, or AI edited photos in general, from users who are intentionally plugging their images into ChatGPT, for example, to, define their muscles or add a cat or, whatever. So this has already been a problem.
Is this driving folks away from these dating apps, though? I wonder, because of, like, you talked about it, like there's already an issue of catfishing. Now they're enhancing photos. Like, how do you actually know the person that's going to show up for you is the person that you saw online?
Yeah, I mean, Jenny, for example, she was the one who had the fake set of teeth added to her face. She said that was enough to prompt her to just delete the app entirely.
Wow.
So yeah, it seems like people are growing a little fatigued. There's already a lot of fatigue around online dating, but now when you don't know if someone might be talking to you through a chat bot, or if you don't know whether someone AI edited their photos, it just makes things that much harder online.
Just go back to good old picking up someone at a bar. Meeting someone through a friend. Just,
Exactly.
What we did, not you. I know you're a lot younger than me. What I did 2 decades ago.
Exactly.
Angela Yang, thank you.
Thank you.
That is going to do it for us at Here's the Scoop from NBC News. I'm Yasmin Vestugin. We'll be back tomorrow with whatever the day may bring. And if you like what you saw and you heard, press the subscribe button. We'll see you tomorrow.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.